I had helped my daughter and her family out of a significant financial bind. I settled a $160,000 debt for them and even gave them my own house as a fresh start. Just a couple of days later, however, they sold the house and left the country. My son-in-law sent a letter with a cruel message. "You stink, you old loser." It seemed they thought they had successfully escaped the consequences of their actions, but they were unaware of the hidden trap within the house that would ultimately make them pay for their betrayal. The moment I touched the envelope, something felt off. It was a Tuesday evening, March 18th, and I had just gotten home from another exhausting day at Henderson & Associates. My keys jingled as I struggled with the mailbox lock, pulling out the usual stack of mail. There were bills, junk mail, and a magazine, but this envelope caught my attention immediately. It was a simple white envelope with no return address. My name was written on the front in bold, block letters. The paper itself felt much heavier and more expensive than standard mail. I flipped it over a couple of times, searching for any kind of identifying marks. There was nothing, just my name staring back at me in that recognizable blue ink. Once inside my kitchen, I put my briefcase on the counter and proceeded to open the envelope with care. The center of the page was filled with 3 words in all capital letters. "You stink, old loser." My stomach sank. The handwriting immediately felt familiar, chilling me like ice water. I recognized the aggressive strokes, the way the letter Y slanted to the right, and the unique loop in the letter G. I realized my son-in-law, David, had written this. The note slipped from my shaking hands and floated down to the counter. I wondered why David would send me something so cruel. While we'd certainly had our disagreements, this was far beyond anything I could have ever imagined. A memory came to mind from 3 weeks earlier at my daughter Emily's house. It was Sunday dinner, and the meal had quickly turned into an argument when David asked me to co-sign another loan. He'd explained it was for debt consolidation and to improve their credit score. I had refused politely but firmly, explaining that I couldn't continue to support their financial issues. David had sneered at me, jabbing his fork in my direction, and told me I was being selfish. He insisted that since I had more money than I could ever spend, and because we were family, I should help them. I calmly responded that being family did not mean they had unlimited access to my money, all while trying to control the anger that was building inside me. Emily remained silent throughout the entire argument, just picking at her food as her husband criticized me. When David stormed out, slamming the front door so hard that the windows shook, she muttered that he was just under a lot of stress. She offered no apology and never acknowledged how inappropriate his behavior was. This letter made it clear to me what he really thought of me. I picked up my phone and called Emily's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Her cheerful voice on the recording felt like a mockery. Next, I called David's cell phone. The automated message I got was even worse, telling me that the number was no longer in service. A wave of panic started to rise in my throat. I tried their landline, but the result was the same. The number had been disconnected. My fingers automatically dialed Emily's workplace. I thought maybe she was working extra shifts again. I spoke to the receptionist, whose voice was polite but firm. She told me that Emily had quit about 3 weeks ago and had not left a forwarding number. That was right after our argument. I then called Sarah, Emily's best friend from college. She answered on the second ring, sounding a little distracted. She asked if everything was all right. I explained I was trying to reach Emily and asked if she had heard from her lately. She paused and said she hadn't for weeks, and that she had been wondering if Emily was avoiding her. She said they had plans for coffee last Tuesday, but Emily hadn't shown up and hadn't called to cancel. It felt like the kitchen walls were closing in on me. I decided to call David's brother, Mike, next, hoping he would have some information. Mike's voice was filled with relief when he answered, saying he was glad I'd called. He told me he'd been trying to reach David for 2 weeks, mentioning that David had borrowed $500 from him the month before with a promise to pay it back by now. He confirmed that both of their phones were disconnected. After the call ended, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the horrible letter. The blue ink seemed to taunt me, with each word burning a deeper impression on my mind. I couldn't understand where they were or why they had cut off all contact after sending such a vicious message. The clock read 11:30 p.m. When I finally accepted that I wouldn't be able to sleep, I made myself some coffee and pulled out some photo albums, hoping to find some answers or just some happier memories. I saw a picture of Emily as a little girl, missing her front teeth but smiling broadly at her birthday party. Then I saw a photo from Emily and David's wedding, where I had walked her down the aisle since her mother, Susan, wasn't there. I wondered if I had been blind to the warning signs, if I had been too trusting or too generous. It was 2:17 a.m., and I was still at the kitchen table. The letter was spread out in front of me, like evidence at a crime scene. Every time I looked at those 3 words, they hurt even more. This note wasn't just cruel, it was premeditated and designed to cause me pain. I couldn't understand why. What had I done to deserve this level of hatred from my own son-in-law? And why was Emily allowing it? The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 3 times. Then 4. I watched the time change on my phone. For 30, for 45, and then 5 o'clock. By 5:47 a.m., I had given up on any hope of sleeping. A clear decision had formed in my mind, as precise as the frost on the windows. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I was going to drive to their house in Lake County. Since they wouldn't take my calls, they would have to confront me in person. Whatever was happening, whatever had led them to be this cruel, I deserved an explanation. I grabbed my car keys and walked out the door. The morning air felt cool against my face as I reversed out of the driveway. I kept thinking about the letter, which felt like a brand on my memory. The sun began to rise, casting a new light on my windshield as I drove along the winding roads toward Lake County. The coffee in my cup holder was now cold, forgotten beside the crumpled letter in my jacket pocket that seemed to be burning a hole through it. During the 45-minute drive, I still held onto some hope. I thought perhaps their phones had just died, or they were simply sleeping in. I hoped there was a simple explanation for everything. The house was located in Maple Grove Estates, a community where a single home cost more than most people would make in 5 years. I had thought that my daughter would be safe and happy there. As I turned into the familiar driveway, my stomach twisted with unease. There were no cars in the driveway and no lights on in the house. The front steps were covered with newspapers, like abandoned promises. My legs felt shaky as I walked up to the front door. The spare key I knew was hidden behind the decorative planter was gone. Through the living room window, I could see that the furniture was covered in white sheets, resembling ghosts of the life I had helped them build. It was then that I saw something that took my breath away. There was a red and white sign on the front lawn that looked like a dagger. It simply said, "Sold." My knees gave out, and I grabbed the porch railing to keep myself from falling. I stared at the impossible word. This couldn't be right. I checked the address 2, then 3 times. It was the same house with the same driveway where I had taught Emily how to ride her bike during her summer visits. Mrs. Henderson, who had lived next door for 15 years, came out of her yard. Her silver hair seemed to sparkle in the morning light. She had always waved when I visited and would ask about Emily's latest job or David's newest business idea. She asked if I was all right, and her face was filled with concern. I managed to tell her I was looking for Emily and David, and my voice sounded strange, even to my own ears. "Oh my, didn't they tell you they moved out last weekend?" she asked. She said it was such a rush and that the moving trucks had arrived on Saturday morning. The world around me felt like it was tilting sideways. I wondered aloud if they had moved out. Mrs. Henderson, pulling her cardigan tighter against the morning chill, continued by saying that Emily was crying intensely. She said David seemed pretty agitated, and she saw him snapping at the movers. They said they were going to Europe to get a fresh start. She said they were such a lovely young couple, but they had seemed troubled lately. My hands were shaking now. I asked if they had mentioned me at all. She paused, and it was clear she felt uncomfortable with the question. She finally said that David had mentioned something about family business being settled, and she had just assumed it meant everything was okay. Her voice trailed off as she looked at my confused expression. I thought to myself that I had been settled, like a debt that was paid off and forgotten. I asked which way they had gone. She said they had gone toward the airport and that David had been quite rude when she offered to help carry boxes. He had said they were in a hurry to catch their flight. I thanked Mrs. Henderson, stumbled back to my car, and fumbled for my phone. I called the number on the sold sign and was connected to Pinnacle Real Estate. I inquired about the property, and the agent confirmed it was a cash sale that had closed very quickly. It was listed on Friday and sold on Monday, which they said was quite unusual. When I asked about the sale price, I was told it was $340,000. The buyers were an investment company and had paid the full asking price. I realized the amount was exactly what I had given them for the down payment 3 years earlier. They had sold the home I had helped them buy and had left with every penny. My next call was to David's parents in Nashville. His mother, Margaret, answered on the first ring, and her voice was filled with hope when she heard my name. She told me she was so glad I called and that she had been trying to reach David for weeks. She said he had borrowed $2,000 from them last month, claiming it was a temporary loan while they were sorting out some paperwork. I had to tell her they were gone and that they had sold the house and left for Europe. A painful silence stretched between us. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper, saying he hadn't even said goodbye and that he was her own son. We both realized that we had been played for fools by the children we had trusted. I remained in my car outside the empty house for another hour, watching the sun rise higher over the perfectly manicured lawns. All the pieces of the puzzle fell into place with a sickening sense of clarity. The quick sale of the house, the cruel letter designed to hurt me so deeply that I would not be thinking clearly, and the rushed timeline to make sure no one could stop them. This was not an act of desperation. It was a calculated, premeditated act. The worried, naive father was gone. In his place was a much colder and more calculating man. He was a man who remembered every clause of every financial agreement he had ever drafted. He was a man who knew that actions had consequences and that all debts must eventually be paid. I started the car with a newfound sense of purpose. The 45-minute drive home felt different this time. I had work to do. The numbers kept going through my head the whole way home. $340,000. That was the exact amount I had gifted them for the down payment on the house 3 years ago. Once I was back in my study, I pulled out the filing cabinet that Emily used to joke was my treasure chest. It had 4 drawers filled with meticulous financial records spanning decades. If they wanted to play games with numbers, I would show them what real accounting looked like. I laid out legal pads on my desk and opened my banking records on the computer. The pain was still there, burning beneath my ribs, but a colder feeling had taken over. I needed to figure out exactly how much this betrayal had cost me. The records showed that the first financial crisis began around the time of my wife Susan's funeral, 3 years earlier. Emily had fallen apart and was unable to work for months. The grief had consumed her. David had said he was supporting her through the crisis, even though he was barely keeping his own job. That's when the pattern started. The first emergency was her rent and groceries for 3 months, totaling $20,400. 6 months later, David lost his job. He told me it was due to the economy and shrugged it off, as if it were just the weather. I paid their mortgage and car payments for 2 months, which was $8,000. Then Emily had to have an appendectomy. Their insurance had huge deductibles. David had told me we couldn't let her suffer because of money, failing to mention that he had already spent their emergency fund on some cryptocurrency investment. The medical bills came out to $12,000. My pen moved steadily across the legal pad, each entry a memory. Then came David's new business opportunity, some kind of multi-level marketing scheme that required a large investment. When the business failed, I covered the loss to keep them out of bankruptcy, costing me $15,000. Next was credit card debt consolidation. They had mountains of debt from just barely getting by. David explained that they had never learned to budget correctly, and I gave them another $18,000 to clear their debt. The pattern sped up over the next 3 years. David lost another job. He claimed he had been laid off, though Emily later told me he was frequently late. Then there was a second mortgage crisis costing $22,000. A car accident involving Emily and an uninsured driver cost another $9,000. David's certification course, which he claimed would guarantee him a better job, cost $5,000. There were also holiday emergencies and family crises, always something costing around $8,000, which were scattered across desperate phone calls. By the 7th year, the amounts had become outrageous. David lost his third job, which led to an extended period of unemployment. He had said that the job market was brutal for people their age, even though he was only 32. I provided 6 months of support, costing me $25,000. When they lost their apartment, I provided temporary housing assistance for $14,000. Then smaller emergencies became a regular thing. There was $200 for utilities, $800 for car repairs, $1,500 for medical bills, and another $7,600 that slowly bled out of my account. My calculator displayed the grand total, $160,000 over 8 years. That was an average of $20,000 annually, more than many families make in a year. The house, however, was a completely different story. 2 weeks ago, I had been sitting at the same desk when David demanded that I co-sign another loan. Emily had been crying, claiming that they were really struggling this time. But I saw something in David's eyes that was calculating, not desperate. I finally suggested that they take the house instead. Emily's face lit up with genuine surprise. David's expression immediately changed to assessment as he started to calculate the square footage and market value. I should have recognized that look. I had told him that I would need proper legal documents to make the gift official. My lawyer, Linda, had drafted the conditional gift agreement with her usual precision, which she had called a standard protective language. The agreement stated that if the property were to be sold within 5 years, the recipients must return the fair market value to the donor. Emily had signed it without even reading it, completely trusting me. David had quickly scanned the document, shrugged, and said it was fine, adding that they weren't going to sell it anyway. Now, as I stared at the signed agreement on my desk, the full scope of their plan became clear. The market value of the house was $340,000, and 8 years of emergency assistance came out to $160,000. The total sacrifice was $500,000. $500,000, which was more than 9 years of my pension income. That was money my wife Susan and I should have used for traveling, home improvements, and the security she had wanted me to have after she was gone. For this betrayal, they had paid me with only 3 words of contempt. Linda's careful legal language seemed to stare back at me from the gift agreement. The conditional clause was clearly displayed and impossible to overlook. Emily's and David's signatures looked different to me now. They didn't seem like grateful family members. They looked like con artists leaving behind evidence. The wall clock showed 5:30 p.m. It had been almost a full day since I had found that letter. The next day felt different already, filled with a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in years. I carefully closed the documents, with each page feeling like a weapon that I had been too trusting to recognize. The next day I would make some calls. It was time they found out about consequences. I had spent the entire night thinking, not sleeping. On Thursday morning, I found myself back at my desk, but everything felt different now. The gift agreement lay open beside a fresh legal pad. For the first time in 3 days, I felt like I was in control. I would approach this like any other complex financial project. Systematically, methodically, and with clear objectives and measurable outcomes. The emotional father had vanished, and the strategic businessman had taken his place. There were 23 days left on the legal deadline. It was time to get to work. At exactly 9 a.m., I called my lawyer Linda's office. Her secretary immediately put me through. I explained that I needed to discuss the gift agreement she had drafted for Emily and David. There was a pause, and then her familiar voice warmed with understanding. She said she had been wondering when I was going to call about this and asked if they had sold the house. I could tell her that they had and that they had fled to Europe with the proceeds. Linda did not hesitate to tell me that the conditional clause was unbreakable. She said that the sale triggered an automatic repayment obligation of the full market value, which was $340,000, and it was due within 30 days of the completion of the sale. She assured me that she could freeze assets, garnish accounts, and even pursue collection through international legal channels if it was needed. I felt a spark of satisfaction for the first time in days. I asked her how enforceable it was internationally. She said it was very enforceable and that she had colleagues in Amsterdam, London, and Paris. Linda explained that European courts respected well-drafted American contracts, especially when fraud was involved. I heard a change in her tone. She asked if there was fraud involved, and her voice became professionally sharp. She wanted to know if they had revealed their intention to sell when they signed the agreement. I remembered how eager David had been to just get past the conditional language. It was all too eager. That, I realized, was intent to defraud, and it would greatly strengthen our case. I could hear papers shuffling on her end of the phone. She said she could file the demand notice immediately, and her European colleagues could start the enforcement procedures right away. I told her to wait. I wanted to handle the situation myself for now, but I asked her to have everything ready, as I might need her to act quickly. Linda let out a small chuckle, a sound I recognized from her handling of challenging opponents. She said, of course, remarking that I had always been a thorough person. The documents would be ready within the hour, she said. My next call was to Thomas at First National, a banker I had worked with for years. Thomas had managed commercial accounts when I was still working and had a deep understanding of international banking. I explained the situation to him, and he told me that banking compliance was a serious matter. I described it as a legal issue involving a violation of a gift agreement. I needed him to discreetly monitor transaction patterns for specific individuals. He remained silent for a moment before saying he could flag large transactions and set up alerts for any movements over $10,000. He said any unusual activity would trigger an automatic notification. He said it was a professional courtesy between colleagues, which was exactly what I needed. He asked me to send him their names and any account information I had, and he promised to have the monitoring network in place by the end of the business day. After we hung up, I opened my laptop to begin my own digital search. I found Emily's Facebook profile first. Her public posts from Amsterdam showed expensive restaurants, luxurious hotels, and designer shopping sprees. David's LinkedIn profile boasted about their new European lifestyle, with geotagged locations at high-end establishments. I realized they were creating their own evidence. Each post, picture, and location tag added to the case against them. All of those expensive dinners, luxurious accommodations, and shopping trips were paid for with money that was legally mine. I systematically took screenshots of everything. I noted the dates, locations, and estimated costs. I calculated that at their current spending rate, they would burn through the money from the house in less than 6 months. I knew that people become careless when they are desperate, and desperate people are prone to making mistakes. I set up Google alerts for their names, creating a comprehensive system to monitor them. Any social media updates, news mentions, or other digital footprint would trigger an immediate notification. I would know where they were going before they even planned it. As I planned out their situation, the tactical advantages became clear. They were in an unknown place, spending money recklessly, and leaving digital breadcrumbs everywhere they went. Meanwhile, I was in my own study with 30 years of professional connections, a solid legal position, and a patient plan. I knew that different tactics would work on each of them. Emily was vulnerable to guilt. She had always been sensitive about letting our family down. David was driven by fear and his own self-interest. I decided to start with Emily, as she was the weak link in their partnership. I knew she would be the first to break under pressure. Everything was coming together with the precision of a mathematical equation. I had a solid legal foundation, active financial monitoring, comprehensive intelligence gathering, and a timeline with 23 days and counting. I marked my calendar with all of the key pressure points, escalation dates, and the final deadline. They had taught me about betrayal, thinking they would escape the consequences. Tomorrow, I would begin teaching them about accountability. Everything was now in place. Tomorrow, I would remind them about their family obligations. I had slept better than I had in several days. Friday morning, I found myself at my desk with the legal documents organized in a precise order, with contact numbers highlighted and the timeline marked on my calendar. There were 22 days left, and it was time to activate the consequences. At exactly 9 o'clock, I called Linda's office. I told Linda to file the demand notice immediately. I wanted to make sure everything was done by the book. She assured me it would be done, and her voice had the same crisp efficiency I remembered from her toughest cases. She said they would receive the official notice by certified international delivery on Monday morning. The notice would demand the full market value of $340,000. It would be due within 22 days, or we would proceed with asset seizure and collection. My next call was to Thomas. I told him it was time to implement the monitoring we had talked about. He immediately understood, saying he could flag any suspicious transactions based on my legal filing. He said any international transfers over $5,000 would trigger an alert. He also said he was already seeing significant activity in Amsterdam. He said their hotel charges and luxury shopping had already burned through more than $40,000 in just the last week. I was completely satisfied with the numbers. I asked if he could place discretionary holds on their accounts, pending the legal resolution that had already been initiated. I wanted them to wonder why their cards were being declined. By 10:30, Linda's legal team had finished preparing the formal demand notice for international delivery. The language was firm and unwavering. It stated that if they did not comply within 22 days, their assets would be seized by my European legal partners, with every requirement meticulously followed and every protocol properly executed. That afternoon, I spent my time monitoring their social media accounts in real time. Emily's Instagram stories showed a picture of a dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant. I knew that would easily cost at least $300 for the two of them. David's LinkedIn profile boasted about their new European lifestyle, with a location tag from the most expensive shopping district in Amsterdam. They were documenting their own evidence against themselves. Each post, geotagged location, an expensive meal added to the case against them. I figured that at their current rate of spending, which was between $2,000 and $3,000 a day, they would spend half of the money in 3 months. I knew that desperation would make them more willing to cooperate. At 1:47 p.m., my phone began to ring. The caller ID showed Emily's international number. I let the call go to voicemail. Her message arrived just moments later, and her voice was shaky despite a forced casualness. She said they were having some weird banking issues. She said their cards weren't working correctly. She asked if I could call her back. She said it was nothing urgent, just some strange technical stuff. The panic underneath her casual tone was undeniable. The first sign of weakness in their confidence had appeared exactly as I had predicted it would. Emily's personality hadn't changed at all. When she was under pressure, she turned to me for family support, expecting the same unconditional help she always had. I decided not to call her back. A strategic silence was more powerful than an immediate confrontation. I would let them sit with the uncertainty over the weekend. On Monday, the legal delivery would provide them with all the clarity they needed. This was exactly how successful negotiations were conducted. You had to establish leverage, control the flow of information, and maintain a timing advantage. They had taught me about betrayal, believing they had escaped the consequences. Now they would be learning about accountability. The trap was closing in perfectly. Professional patience always trumped emotional reaction. I poured myself a glass of wine and waited. Monday would be a day of reckoning for them. I had spent a peaceful weekend knowing that their cards were not working throughout Amsterdam. Monday morning, I was at breakfast when my phone started to ring. It was Emily's international number, appearing exactly on schedule. Emily had never been an early riser. This call was a clear sign of desperation. I let the phone ring 3 times before I answered. "Hello, Emily," I said. She responded, asking how I was with a forced enthusiasm that didn't fool me. She said they were having the most amazing time in Amsterdam. She said I would love the museums and that the architecture was incredible. I knew she was stalling, trying to find the courage to say what she really wanted to. I remained silent, allowing the pressure to build until she finally revealed the real reason for her call. Her voice cracked slightly as she spoke again. She said they were having some strange banking issues. She explained that their cards had suddenly stopped working on Friday and that the bank was saying there was some kind of hold on the accounts. She said they were stranded in an expensive hotel and couldn't pay for anything. I I responded calmly that banking issues could be complicated. She rushed to blame it on some kind of European regulation, deflecting all responsibility as she always did. She asked if I could temporarily wire them some money, maybe $5,000, just until they could figure everything out. I commented that was quite a lot of money. I let the silence hang for a moment before I told her that the hold on the bank accounts was not a mistake. She sounded shocked, asking me what I was talking about. I said that it had to do with the house she had sold and the conditional gift agreement she had signed. I asked if she remembered that, confusion mixed with her panic. She stammered, asking what that had to do with anything. I explained that when she had sold the house, she had triggered the repayment clause. I told her that she had 21 days to return the $340,000. The silence that followed lasted about 10 seconds. Then she said that it was crazy. She said they couldn't possibly pay it back and that it had all been David's idea. She claimed she had never wanted to sell the house. He had convinced her they needed a fresh start in Europe. She reminded me how persuasive he could be. I told her that both of them had signed the agreement. She told me they didn't have that kind of money anymore, and her voice was rising with hysteria. She said they had been living there and that their expenses were so high. I said that according to their social media posts, they had spent $50,000 in 10 days. The shock in her voice was genuine as she said I had been watching their posts. She desperately said she was going to put David on the phone. She told me he could explain it better. I could hear background noise and angry voices, and then David's aggressive tone came through the phone. He said that it was ridiculous and that I couldn't just freeze their accounts. I calmly informed him that I could and I had. He tried to tell me they would pay me back eventually, but that the timeline was impossible. He accused me of being unreasonable and vindictive. I calmly told him that I was being precise and legal. I said that they had 21 days or the asset seizure would begin. I mentioned that my European legal partners were standing by. He asked if I was actually serious about it, and his bravado was starting to crack. I told him I was deadly serious. He asked if they could give me half of the money now and half later, but I simply repeated that they had 21 days to pay the full amount. He insisted that it was insane because we were family. I pointed out that family members do not send anonymous hate mail. Emily got the phone back from him, and her voice was tearful. She pleaded with me, saying she was scared, and admitted she had made mistakes, but that she needed my help. She even said that her mother would have wanted me to help her. I replied that her mother would be ashamed of her betrayal. She asked what they were supposed to do, saying they had nothing left. She said they would be homeless and stranded in a foreign country. I responded that they should have thought about that before they sold the house. The line went dead. The 21 days had become a countdown to their consequences. I knew everything I needed to know from their panic. I went back to my computer and opened Emily's Instagram feed. Her most recent story, posted 2 hours earlier, showed the ornate lobby of a hotel in The Hague, with crying emojis and the words "worst day ever" on top of it. The Hague. How fitting, I thought to myself. It was the home of international law. David's LinkedIn profile showed a new post from this morning. He wrote that he was dealing with family drama but was staying strong. Photos on Facebook showed a premium BMW rental and expensive restaurant meals. Even in the midst of their crisis, they were still spending money as if it were endless. It was time to apply more pressure. At 3 p.m. Memphis time, which was 9 p.m. In Amsterdam, I called my Dutch legal team. Linda had given me their contact information for exactly this type of situation. I introduced myself, telling them I was referred by Linda regarding international debt collection. A crisp Dutch accent responded, saying they had been expecting my call. He said that the conditional gift agreement provided an excellent foundation for an account preservation order in Europe. I asked how quickly they could move forward with the proceedings. He said they could file the European Account Preservation Order, or EAPO, the next morning and freeze all of their European bank accounts within 24 hours. He said that the documentation I had transferred that afternoon was everything they needed. Perfect, I thought. I asked about the enforcement timeline. He said that by Wednesday morning, all of their European financial assets would be completely inaccessible. He said their investigators handled 200 international collection cases every year. He told me they knew exactly how to apply the maximum amount of legal pressure. I spent the rest of the evening cross-referencing their social media posts with hotel booking sites and rental car agencies. Emily's geotagged posts confirmed they were staying at Hotel Dend, which was within walking distance of the Dutch legal district, where the European account preservation order would be filed the next day. I also found that David's rental BMW 3 Series came with premium insurance, which was an extra €120 every day. I realized that their location was no accident. Being in The Hague meant they were only 30 minutes from Amsterdam's financial district, which was close to the very banks that would be freezing their accounts. By 6 p.m., all of the coordination was complete. Linda in Memphis, my Dutch legal team in Amsterdam, and Thomas monitoring the international banking networks were all working together. Tuesday morning would bring the filing of the EAPO. Wednesday would bring the account freezing. Thursday would create a hotel payment crisis for them when their cards would finally be declined for good. I knew that strategic patience was more important than emotional satisfaction. I would let them sleep one more night in a state of uncertainty, wondering when the next consequence would arrive. By Tuesday morning, Amsterdam time, all of their comfortable assumptions about European banking would be completely shattered. The Dutch legal system worked exactly as I had been promised it would. My phone buzzed with angry messages from a European number I didn't recognize. I saw from the preview that the messages were in all capital letters. He accused me of destroying my own family. Right on schedule. David's rage had erupted into a barrage of text messages. He said that it was insane and that I had gone too far. He then escalated. He asked how I could do this to Emily, telling me that they were my family. That was followed by threats. He told me he had lawyers too and that they would fight this. His final message showed pure desperation. He said that I would regret this when everyone found out what kind of father I really was. I read each message with a professional detachment. I knew it was a textbook display of desperation. It was a predictable reaction. Every single move they made was one I had anticipated. It was time to let Linda handle this. At 9 o'clock, my phone rang again. The number had an Amsterdam area code. The person on the line said he was their attorney, representing David. He said they were challenging the conditional gift agreement, claiming that the terms were unconscionable and that there was undue influence. I replied calmly and told him to direct all communications to my attorney, Linda, and provided him with her contact information. Linda's response was immediate when I called her. She asked if I had expected this. She said she had drafted the agreement to withstand any challenges. Every clause had been triple-checked, and all of the procedures had been documented. I asked her how solid our case was, and she told me it was ironclad. She said that Emily had signed after a full legal review period. She had even offered them independent counsel, but Emily had declined. The signing ceremony had even been recorded for their protection. She said their attorney would discover that we had covered every possible angle. By 10:30, Linda had coordinated with my Dutch legal team. The Dutch legal opinion was clear and straightforward. They said that the challenge had no merit under either European Union or Netherlands law. A motion to dismiss would be filed within 24 hours. In the meantime, David began his social media offensive with a Facebook post. He called it a cautionary tale of when family turns against family. His Instagram story showed that he was stranded abroad by a vindictive relative. His LinkedIn update was about family business ethics. He even had a Twitter thread explaining how conditional gifts could become financial weapons. Linda's social media specialist took screenshots of everything for the legal proceedings. Our strategy was working elegantly. I would just let them damage their own credibility. Comments were already starting to ask uncomfortable questions. People were asking questions like, "You sold his house? Why didn't you pay him back?" David's desperation peaked with a direct phone call. He snarled at me, telling me I had no idea who I was messing with. He said he knew people and that this would not end well for me. I recorded every word he said, just as Linda had advised me to. Empty threats from a powerless position, I noted to myself. Emily's voice came through, tearful, but threatening. We'll tell everyone how cruel you are. Pay our hotel bill or we'll be homeless. By 11 o'clock, Margaret filed additional motions. Sanctions for harassment, she explained. A $10,000 penalty for each violation. Their threatening behavior violated the settlement terms. The deadline was reduced to 15 days due to their misconduct. The Dutch Bar Association received a professional conduct complaint about Hendris and Partners clients engaging in prohibited harassment. Every countermove they had attempted only strengthened my position. By evening, their legal challenge was dismissed, and additional sanctions were approved. They had 15 days left. Midnight in The Hague, my phone lit up with a video call notification. Emily's face appeared on the screen. This wasn't a casual call. This was her last card to play. I answered, keeping my expression neutral. The video connected, revealing Emily in a cramped, shabby hotel room. Tears streamed down her face. Real ones this time, not the performed emotion I'd grown accustomed to. Behind her, David paced like a caged animal in the dim lighting. "Daddy, please just listen to me," she began, her voice broken with exhaustion. "I'm listening, Emily. We're living like refugees in this horrible place. The room smells. The heat doesn't work. We're eating convenience store sandwiches and walking everywhere because we can't afford taxis." Her story poured out in desperate chunks. "I think I'm getting sick from the stress. I haven't slept in days. I can't keep food down. What if something serious happens to me here? We don't know anyone. We don't speak the language." This was a classic victim position. I remained silent, letting her continue. "Remember when I was little and scared? You always protected me from nightmares. You said you'd never let anything bad happen to me." Her voice cracked with childhood regression. "Mom would be heartbroken seeing us like this. She always said, 'Family comes first.' What would she think of what you're doing to her daughter?" The mother card. This was the first real emotional hit, but I had prepared for this too. "Just enough to get home, please," Emily continued, reducing her demands. "Not the full amount, just travel money. We'll pay back every penny somehow. Just a few more months, please." Her desperation escalated. "I'll leave David if that's what you want. I know you never liked him. I'll come home alone, start over." She was throwing David under the bus now, sacrificing her marriage for financial salvation. "I don't know what I'll do if you abandon me," she whispered, moving into darker territory. "I can't handle this pressure much longer. This is destroying me, Daddy." David's voice erupted from behind her. "Tell him we'll be homeless. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I need my daddy to save me." Emily's breakdown reached its peak. "Don't you love me anymore? I'll do anything, please." I took a deep breath, accessing the steel core I'd built over these weeks. "Emily, I do love you, but love doesn't mean enabling destruction. You made adult choices with adult consequences. This situation is of your own making. Mom would want you to help me. Your mother would be disappointed in your choices. She taught you responsibility and honesty. Linda never tolerated manipulation or lies. She would support teaching you this lesson. Real love means letting you face consequences. This is your chance to become independent. 15 days to make this right. I'll help when you've learned responsibility." David grabbed the phone. "Enough of this emotional garbage. Your daughter is suffering because of your pride. When she gets hurt, it's on you. My conscience is clear, David. I love you, Emily, but the terms don't change." Emily's face crumpled as reality hit. David threw something in the background. 15 days. I ended the call. The silence afterward felt different. Final. 6 months later, my Sunday afternoon routine included reviewing bank statements that told a different story. $5,000 monthly payments, arriving like clockwork since March. No missed deadlines, no excuses, no drama. Just consistent responsibility from two people learning what work actually meant. The phone rang at 2 p.m. Emily's number, but her tone carried none of the old manipulation. "Dad, could we talk? David and I have something important to say. Could we come over this afternoon?" No desperation, no crisis, just a respectful request. For a clock. I'll make coffee. They arrived promptly, and the visual changes struck me immediately. Emily wore work clothes, practical pants, and comfortable shoes, the attire of someone who spent days on her feet. David's hands showed calluses from construction work. His shoulders were broader from physical labor. Dad, I need to say things I should have said long ago. Emily's voice was steady, mature. I was spoiled, entitled, and ungrateful. You gave me everything, and I threw it away. Working taught me what money actually means, the hours, the effort, the sacrifice behind every dollar. David stepped forward, his former arrogance replaced by genuine humility. Mr. Peterson, I owe you more than money. I was arrogant, disrespectful, and wrong about everything. That anonymous letter was cruel and cowardly. You handled this like a man of principle while I acted like a child. We want to earn your trust back, Emily continued. Whatever rules you think are fair, whatever timeline works for you, we want to be a family you can be proud of. I studied their faces. There was no performance, no angles, just two people who had learned hard lessons and emerged differently. Linda always believed in second chances after growth had occurred. You've shown consistency for 6 months, I said finally. The lesson has been taught and received. Now it's time for mercy. I paused, watching their careful hope. I'm reducing your balance to $200,000. 3 years of payments instead of 4. Emily's tears came freely. Thank you for not giving up on me. David's voice cracked. I'll spend years earning your respect. Love means teaching consequences, then showing grace when the lesson sticks. We established new traditions, weekly family calls, earned holiday invitations, and honest communication about their real lives. They would continue the payments, but our relationship would rebuild through consistent actions, not financial transactions. 1 year later, Thanksgiving 2026, brought them to my dining room alongside Aunt Susan and extended family. Emily had been promoted to supervisor at her retail job. David was a foreman at his construction company. They had paid $140,000, with $60,000 remaining. During dinner preparation, David approached me privately. Thank you for making me a better man. Thank you for becoming one. Justice had taught the lesson. Mercy healed the relationship. Love sometimes requires letting people face consequences, then celebrating when they choose to grow. Friday morning brought the white flag at last. My email showed a message with the subject line, Formal Apology and Settlement Request, David Johnson. The timestamp was 2:30 a.m. The Hague time. The surrender had taken all night to write. Mr. Peterson, it began. I formally apologize for my previous behavior. You were right to include the conditional clause. We have learned expensive lessons about consequences. The email continued with devastating honesty. Hotel management is threatening police involvement. We have approximately €200 remaining. We cannot afford return flights. Emily requires medication we cannot purchase. Then came the formal plea. Respectfully request settlement negotiations. Understanding 14 days remain. Willing to accept reasonable payment terms. Hope to resolve this matter with minimal legal escalation. I called him immediately. I received your email, I said when David answered. His voice carried complete defeat. Thank you for calling, Mr. Peterson. Let's discuss terms. I was wrong about everything, David said without hesitation. This situation is entirely our fault. You handled this professionally and fairly. I should have appreciated your generosity. The power dynamic had reversed completely. Full amount plus sanctions, $360,000. I stated the sanctions increased the total. His shock was genuine. Consequences for harassment and legal challenges. Understood. What payment options exist? We discussed their BMW rental, worth approximately $45,000, roughly $48,000 at current exchange rates. David could liquidate it immediately. Send all sales paperwork. Direct wire transfer within 48 hours. Linda will confirm receipt. What about the remaining balance? $312,000 after the car sale. I paused, considering my strategic position. Transfer $2,000 immediately for hotel accommodation. An additional $500 for Emily's medication. You would do that? David's gratitude was genuine. I'm showing mercy from a position of strength, David. All future contact goes through Linda. No public discussion of settlement. Professional behavior is required. Violations will trigger additional $10,000 penalties. Completely understood. Weekly status reports, financial transparency, whatever you require. The conversation lasted 2 hours. By the end, David's transformation was complete. From arrogant threat maker to respectful supplicant. Emily remained silent in the background. Her fight was completely gone. We'll contact the BMW dealer immediately, David promised. Sales documentation within 6 hours. Good. The immediate relief transfer will happen today. Mr. Peterson, thank you for the lesson and the mercy. I hung up satisfied. Justice had been delivered professionally, with grace and victory. The first wire transfer was scheduled for Sunday morning. Real money, real consequences, real change. 1 week later, I was reviewing bank statements when my phone rang. The BMW payment had cleared, $48,000, exactly as promised. But this call was from Susan Martinez, Linda's sister. Paul, I'm worried about Emily. She called me crying. Says you're being unreasonable about some legal misunderstanding over the house. They were playing the family card. Susan, what exactly did Emily tell you? Something about struggling financially and needing family support. Linda would want you to help her daughter. I took a breath. Did she mention selling the villa I gave her without telling me? Or the anonymous hate letter calling me an old loser before they fled to Europe with $340,000? Silence. Then, I had no idea. I have given them over $500,000 in support over 8 years. Susan. Real help means letting people face consequences. Emily learned to manipulate because we always rescued her. You're right. I'm sorry for calling. No apology needed. You were being a caring aunt. An hour later, Emily called directly. Dad, we've changed. David's looking for work. I started job applications. We'll be different, more responsible. We just need more time to get on our feet. I'd already checked through my contacts. 12 fast food applications isn't a career commitment. Emily, I never realized how hard job hunting is. I don't have experience in anything practical. David's degree doesn't guarantee employment when you're competing with younger, qualified people. We're living so simply now. A tiny apartment, cooking at home, no luxuries. David sold his watch. I sold my jewelry. That might cover 1 month's rent. What about the $307,000 still owed? Her voice cracked. Monthly payments over 5 years will pay interest. Make it worth your while. The terms remain unchanged. 7 days. Wednesday brought a wire transfer notification. $5,000 from Emily Johnson. Real money from real work. David's construction wages plus Emily's jewelry sale. Progress. The next payment was $5,000, which made for a total of $53,000 paid and $37,000 remaining. Emily called about the transfer, exhaustion evident. This is everything we have. I worked 60 hours last week. David's contribution, construction job, $15 an hour when available. The mathematics were unforgiving. We might make $4,800 in good months. The mathematics were unforgiving. 5 years minimum at their current earning capacity. They finally understood the scope. Thursday morning brought Emily's final card. David's grandmother wants to help. She's offering her retirement savings. Absolutely not acceptable. But this debt is yours, not an 89-year-old woman's. I won't allow elderly exploitation. Focus on your own earning capacity. 6 days remained. 6 days to find $37,000. The mathematics of consequence were unforgiving.